A millionaire doctor murmured, "Act like you're with me." Yet she never imagined his hidden secret. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Emily Harper was the kind of girl who had always dreamed big. Growing up in a small town, she knew that she was destined for more than just the mundane life around her. She worked hard, studied late into the night, and eventually earned a spot at a prestigious medical school. Emily was now a senior, ready to take on the world, but little did she know, her life was about to take an unexpected turn. One day, she was sitting in a lecture hall when she first saw him. Dr. Alexander Wells, the millionaire doctor. His reputation preceded him, smart, successful, and incredibly wealthy. He was the type of man who could make anyone feel small just by walking into a room. Yet, there was something about him that drew Emily in. He wasn't just a doctor, he was an enigma. With his sharp, dark eyes and immaculate appearance, it was easy to see why he captivated so many people. But as much as Emily admired his success, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. They first spoke after one of his lectures. Emily had asked a question about a complex medical procedure, and Dr. Wells, who was known for being somewhat aloof with students, took an unexpected interest in her. His voice was soft, almost a whisper, and when he spoke to her, it felt as though the rest of the room faded into the background. There was something magnetic about him, something mysterious. "You have a sharp mind, Emily," he said. "Keep thinking like that, and you'll go far in this field." His words felt like more than just praise. They felt like an invitation into a world she had only dreamed of. Over the next few weeks, Emily found herself spending more time around Dr. Wells. He began to take a special interest in her academic progress, offering private tutoring sessions and mentoring her on complex cases. Emily was flattered, but at the same time, she couldn't help but notice the strange aura that surrounded him. There were moments when he would look at her with an intensity that sent chills down her spine. But she pushed the thoughts aside. After all, he was a mentor, someone who could help her achieve her dreams. But then, during one of their late-night study sessions, something happened that Emily would never forget. As she was reviewing a difficult diagnosis, Dr. Wells leaned in closer and whispered in her ear, "Pretend you're with me, Emily, and you'll see the truth." The words were cryptic, but the way he said them felt like a warning. Or maybe it was a promise. She couldn't tell. And that was the moment when everything started to change. Little did Emily know, the dark secret Dr. Wells was hiding would soon unravel, and it would change her life forever. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Ever since Dr. Wells whispered those words to her, they haunted her thoughts. "Pretend you're with me, Emily, and you'll see the truth." What did he mean? Was it a challenge, a warning, or something else? She spent the next few days reflecting on their conversations, replaying his every word, his every look, trying to make sense of the mystery that surrounded him. Dr. Wells was a brilliant man, undeniably successful, and yet there was something about him that didn't quite add up. He was charming, yes, but there was an air of secrecy that lingered in his presence. Emily found herself caught between admiration and suspicion, unsure of how to navigate her feelings for him. Her academic progress with his guidance had been extraordinary. Dr. Wells had an uncanny ability to break down complex medical concepts, making them seem almost simple. His mentoring had pushed her to new heights, and Emily had no doubt that he had played a significant role in her success. But that didn't explain the odd behavior she had noticed. He would disappear for days at a time, only to return as if nothing had happened. His schedule was unpredictable, and there were times when Emily couldn't reach him at all. She had tried to ignore it, convincing herself that maybe he was just a busy doctor, dealing with his own personal matters. But when she overheard a conversation between two of the hospital staff members, her curiosity got the better of her. "Did you hear about Dr. Wells?" one of the nurses whispered to another. "I heard he's been under investigation for years, but no one can figure out what's going on." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Investigation? She had never heard anything about this before. The nurse continued, "There are rumors. Some say he was involved in something terrible, but no one knows for sure." Emily's mind raced. What could he possibly be involved in? She had never seen any evidence of wrongdoing. He was always professional, always calm, always in control. But was there more to him than she realized? The whispers didn't stop there. The next day, she overheard another conversation, this time between two other doctors. "Dr. Wells is dangerous," one of them said quietly. "You can't trust him. I don't care how smart he is." Emily's stomach churned. Dangerous? What were they talking about? She tried to brush off the unsettling conversations, telling herself that it was all just office gossip. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that there were too many unanswered questions. She decided to take matters into her own hands. Emily began digging deeper, asking around, looking for any hint of what was really going on with Dr. Wells. She found a few scattered reports, mentions of a past scandal, but nothing concrete. But one night, as she was going through the hospital's online records, she came across something that made her blood run cold. It was a document from several years ago, detailing an incident involving a patient under Dr. Wells' care. The details were vague, but the implications were clear. Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. She knew that she had to confront him. The next day, she found herself standing outside his office, heart racing, unsure of what to expect. She had so many questions, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to hear the answers. But one thing was certain, she needed to know the truth. With a deep breath, she knocked on the door, and when Dr. Wells answered, his usual calm demeanor was replaced with something else, something darker. "Emily," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I knew this day would come." Emily stood frozen as Dr. Wells' words echoed in her mind. "I knew this day would come." His calm demeanor, so reassuring in the past, now felt unsettling. She didn't know what to expect, but she certainly wasn't ready for what came next. His eyes, once warm and inviting, now appeared guarded, distant, as if he had already anticipated this moment long before she had even entered his office. The room seemed smaller, almost suffocating, as she stood there, uncertain of how to begin. "Emily," he repeated, his voice steady but lacking the usual warmth. "There are things you don't understand. Things I never wanted you to find out." She swallowed hard, trying to steady her nerves. "What is it, Dr. Wells? What aren't you telling me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He motioned for her to sit, but she hesitated. She had seen this side of him before, the unshakable authority, the control he wielded over those around him. But now, it felt different. It felt like there was something much darker lurking beneath his carefully maintained composure. "I never meant for you to get caught up in this," he began, his voice soft, almost apologetic. "When I took you under my wing, I thought I was giving you an opportunity to learn from the best. But I never imagined you would dig deeper, that you would uncover things that were meant to stay hidden." Emily's mind raced. She had been suspecting something for days, but hearing him say it out loud made everything feel so much more real. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Wells took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts. "Years ago, I was involved in a situation. A mistake, if you will. A decision that cost someone their life. I did everything I could to make it right, but the truth, well, the truth was never meant to come to light. Not until now." His words hung in the air, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean, cost someone their life?" she asked, the weight of his words settling heavily in her chest. He stood up, walking toward the window, staring out into the city below. "There was an accident," he said, his voice barely above a murmur. "A young woman. She came to me for help, and I failed her. I made a mistake that changed everything. And for years, I've tried to bury it, to move on, but it's been eating away at me." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had known Dr. Wells for months, had looked up to him, trusted him, and now everything was unraveling before her eyes. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaky. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something sooner?" Dr. Wells turned to face her, his expression filled with regret. "I didn't want to drag you into this. You were meant for more than this life. But now it's too late. You found out, and there's no going back." His words were heavy, like a burden he had carried for far too long. Emily could feel the weight of it pressing down on her. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," he replied, the uncertainty in his voice matching the turmoil in her heart. "But I can't protect you anymore, Emily. You have to make a choice. The truth is out there, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. Emily took a deep breath, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions racing through her. Her mind was flooded with questions, with doubt, with fear. But one thing was certain. The man she thought she knew, the mentor she trusted, was hiding a secret that would change everything. She had a decision to make. And no matter what choice she made, there would be no turning back. Emily stood there, her heart racing in her chest as the weight of Dr. Wells' words sank in. He had confessed to something that sounded so unbelievable, yet here he was, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. He was a man she had admired, someone she thought was untouchable, and now he was admitting to a mistake that had cost someone their life. But the truth was, she didn't know what to believe. Was it all true? Could she trust him? She tried to process what he had said, but her mind kept racing. "I don't know if I can keep going," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can stay here with this secret hanging over us." Dr. Wells turned to face her, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and something else she couldn't quite place. "I understand," he said quietly. "You should be angry. You should be upset. But the truth is, Emily, I never wanted you to be a part of this. I never wanted you to carry this burden." Emily shook her head. "But I already am a part of this. You've already involved me." She felt the sting of betrayal. All the trust she had placed in him felt like it had been shattered in an instant. She had believed in him, looked up to him, and now it seemed like everything she had worked for had been built on a lie. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Wells took a deep breath, his posture slumping as if the weight of his confession was too much to bear. "I can't undo what's been done," he said softly. "But I can tell you this. The truth is out there, and if you want to find it, you'll have to make the decision to look for it. But be careful, Emily. Not everything is as it seems." His words felt like a warning, but Emily wasn't sure if she could trust them. Could she really believe him? Or was he trying to manipulate her, just like he had done with so many others before her? She didn't know, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't keep living in the dark. She had to know the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. "I need to find out what really happened," she said, her voice filled with determination. Dr. Wells didn't say anything for a moment, but when he spoke again, there was an air of resignation in his voice. "I can't stop you," he said quietly, "but I wish you would reconsider. There are things you don't understand, things that could change everything. Once you start digging, there's no turning back." Emily looked at him one last time, searching his face for any sign of deception, but all she saw was pain. He was not the man she had thought he was, but she had no choice now. She had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. With a deep breath, she turned and walked out of his office, the heavy weight of the decision she had just made settling over her like a storm cloud. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to face whatever came her way. The truth was out there, and she was going to find it, no matter how long it took. Emily spent the next few days in a haze of uncertainty. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dr. Wells' face, his words echoing in her mind. "Once you start digging, there's no turning back." It was a warning, but it also felt like a challenge. She couldn't just walk away from it now, not after everything she had uncovered. Her mind raced with questions, each one more urgent than the last. What really happened years ago? Was Dr. Wells involved in something sinister? Or was he just a man who made a terrible mistake? The more she thought about it, the more she realized she couldn't let it go. She had to know the truth, no matter what it took. But where could she even begin? Dr. Wells had been careful, too careful, to leave any obvious clues. The hospital records were all locked down, and the staff members who knew anything about his past seemed too scared to speak. Emily wasn't sure where to turn, but then an idea came to her. She had a friend, someone who worked in the hospital's records department. Her name was Sarah, and Emily had known her since her first year in medical school. Sarah was quiet, unassuming, but she had a knack for finding things people didn't want found. Emily hesitated for a moment, unsure whether it was a good idea to drag Sarah into this mess. But then she reminded herself that she had no other options. She couldn't do it alone. She reached out to Sarah, asking if they could meet after work. Sarah agreed, and they arranged to meet at a small coffee shop down the street. As soon as Emily sat down across from Sarah, she could tell something was off. Sarah was tense, her eyes darting around the room as if she was afraid someone might be watching. Emily leaned in, speaking in a low voice. I need your help, Sarah, she said. It's about Dr. Wells. I need to find out what happened years ago. Something he's hiding. Can you get access to the hospital records? Sarah hesitated, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. I don't know, Emily. That's dangerous. You know the rules. If we get caught, I could lose my job. You could lose yours. Emily felt a pang of guilt. She knew what she was asking of Sarah wasn't easy. I wouldn't ask if it weren't important, Emily said softly. I need to know the truth, and I can't do it alone. Sarah looked down at her coffee cup, biting her lip. Emily could see the internal struggle playing out on her face. Finally, Sarah sighed and nodded. Okay, she said quietly. But this is the last time, Emily. If we get caught, we're both in serious trouble. Emily nodded in agreement, relief flooding through her. Thank you, Sarah. I won't forget this. Over the next few days, Sarah worked behind the scenes to get Emily the information she needed. It wasn't easy, but she was determined. Emily could feel the pressure building as the days passed. She had to know what happened, and she had to be prepared for whatever the truth might be. Finally, Sarah came through. She sent Emily an encrypted file, one that contained the documents Emily had been searching for. It was a thick file, filled with detailed reports and notes, some of which were marked as confidential. Emily's hands shook as she opened the file, her eyes scanning the pages. And then, she found it. There it was, hidden among the pages, a report that mentioned a medical malpractice case involving Dr. Wells. The details were vague, but the implications were clear. A patient had died during a routine procedure, and the blame had been placed on Dr. Wells' shoulders. The report mentioned a potential cover-up, but there was no definitive proof. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. This was it. The moment she had been dreading had finally arrived. The truth was out there, and now she knew it. But what would she do with it? Emily sat at her desk, staring at the encrypted file Sarah had sent her. The weight of the documents in front of her felt suffocating. She had found what she was looking for, but now that she knew the truth, she wasn't sure what to do with it. Dr. Wells had made it clear that once. She started digging. There would be no turning back. And yet, here she was, staring at the pages that might unravel everything she had believed about him. The malpractice case was shocking, but it wasn't the whole story. There were pieces missing, gaps in the narrative that didn't quite add up. The report mentioned the patient's death, but there was no clear explanation of what went wrong during the procedure. Emily reread the report, trying to connect the dots, but nothing made sense. It was as if someone had intentionally erased key details. The cover-up mentioned in the document was vague, and there was no hard evidence to point to Dr. Wells' guilt. Still, the fact that it had been classified as confidential raised even more questions. Emily could feel her mind spinning. Was Dr. Wells guilty? Or was he a victim of circumstances, someone caught up in a system that had failed him? She needed answers, and the only person who could give them to her was Dr. Wells himself. But how could she confront him? How could she ask him about something so dark, something he had clearly been hiding for years? Emily knew the risk she was taking by continuing this investigation. If she exposed him, it could destroy both of their careers. And if she was wrong, she could lose everything she had worked for. She had already come so far, and there was no turning back now. Emily had to face him, to ask the questions that had been burning in her mind ever since he confessed to her. But how could she approach him without setting off alarm bells? She decided to wait until the following evening. She would catch him at the hospital after his shift, when the place was quieter, and he would be less likely to be surrounded by others. She would find out the truth, even if it meant putting everything on the line. That evening, Emily arrived at the hospital early, her heart racing. She knew this could be the moment that changed everything. As the clock ticked by, she paced the hallway, her mind racing with a million questions. When Dr. Wells finally walked down the corridor toward her, Emily took a deep breath. This was it. He looked at her, his usual composed expression softening slightly. "Emily," he said, his voice steady but with an underlying tension that she hadn't noticed before. "I didn't expect to see you here." She looked up at him, her heart pounding. "We need to talk," she said, her voice firm. Dr. Wells' eyes narrowed, and for a moment, she could see a flicker of something in his gaze. Was it fear? Or was it something else entirely? He nodded slowly, and without another word, he led her to a quiet corner of the hospital, away from prying eyes. Emily took a deep breath before speaking. "I know about the malpractice case," she said, her voice steady but filled with determination. I need to know what really happened, Dr. Wells. What are you hiding? Dr. Wells didn't flinch, but his expression grew more guarded. He looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. You shouldn't have gotten involved in this, Emily, he said softly. The truth is more complicated than you realize. But now that you know, there's no turning back. Emily's heart sank as she waited for him to continue. This was it, the moment she had been dreading. But there was still so much more to uncover, and she had to know the whole truth, no matter what. Dr. Wells took a slow, measured breath, his face unreadable. Emily stood there, her heart thudding in her chest, waiting for him to speak. She had asked the question that had been haunting her for days. But now, the silence between them felt heavier than ever. Emily, he said softly, his voice carrying a weight she hadn't heard before. I didn't want this to come to light. But now that you know, there's no point in keeping it hidden any longer. His words sent a chill down her spine. She had braced herself for something, but hearing him admit that something was being hidden, something dark, was more unsettling than she had expected. I need to know everything, Dr. Wells, Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. What happened? What really went wrong all those years ago? He paused, his gaze drifting away from her, as if he were searching for the right words, or perhaps trying to find a way to protect himself. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, he began, his voice soft but edged with regret. I was a young doctor, eager to prove myself. There was a patient, a woman, who came to me with a rare condition. It was supposed to be a routine surgery, one I'd done many times before. But something went wrong. Emily leaned in, her eyes focused on his every word. What went wrong? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Wells closed his eyes briefly, as if the memory was painful. There was a complication, one I couldn't have predicted. It was a freak accident, but in the moment, I panicked. I made a choice that I thought was the best one, but it wasn't. And she died. That's the simple truth. His voice cracked, and Emily could see the weight of the guilt in his eyes. I was responsible. I should have done more, but I didn't. And in the aftermath, the hospital, the board, they didn't want it to get out. The media would have torn me apart. They would have destroyed my career. So they covered it up, and I helped them. I never thought it would catch up with me, but now. He stopped, unable to continue. Emily stood frozen, trying to process everything he had just confessed. The words were shocking, and yet, they made a certain sense. He wasn't just a man caught in a scandal. He was someone who had made a terrible mistake, a mistake that had cost someone their life, and then he had chosen to cover it up. So you just let it go? Emily asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. You let an innocent woman's death be hidden just to protect yourself. Dr. Wells looked at her, his expression filled with regret and sorrow. It wasn't just for me, Emily. It was for everyone involved. The family, the hospital, it was easier this way. But I was wrong. I should have come forward. I should have told the truth. But I didn't. And now, I'm paying the price. Emily's mind was spinning. She had suspected there was more to the story, but hearing Dr. Wells admit to this, he wasn't just hiding a secret. He was living with the consequences of his actions every day. He wasn't the man she thought he was. He wasn't perfect. He was flawed, just like everyone else. But was this truth enough to destroy him? Was it enough to destroy everything she had worked for? What happens now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Wells sighed, the weight of the situation heavy on his shoulders. I don't know, Emily. The truth is out now, and once you know something like this, you can't just walk away from it. You have to decide what you're going to do with it. Emily looked at him, her mind racing. She had a choice to make, a choice that could change everything. But no matter what she decided, one thing was clear. Things would never be the same again. The truth was out, but the consequences were just beginning to unfold. Emily's heart was racing as she stood there, the truth hanging in the air like a thick fog. Dr. Wells had confessed, but his words had left her with more questions than answers. The guilt, the regret, the burden of his secret. He was clearly struggling with it, but she wasn't sure if she could forgive him, let alone understand him. She needed time. Time to think, to process what he had just revealed. So, what do I do now? She asked quietly, her voice barely audible, the weight of her own emotions pressing down on her chest. Dr. Wells didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked away, his expression filled with a deep, unspoken sadness. I don't know what you'll do with this information, Emily, he said softly. But you have to decide what's more important to you, the truth or the life you've built for yourself. His words cut through her, each one laced with the gravity of the situation. She had always believed that the truth was the most important thing, but now that it was staring her in the face, she wasn't so sure. What would this truth cost her? Her career? Her reputation? Or worse, her future? She felt as if she were standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down into an unknown abyss. I need to think about this, she said finally, her voice trembling with uncertainty. I can't just jump to conclusions. This is too big. Dr. Wells nodded, his face still a mask of regret. Take all the time you need. But remember, once you start down this path, there's no going back. The truth will follow you wherever you go. Emily stood there for a long moment, trying to steady herself. The weight of the situation felt unbearable. It was one thing to know a secret, but it was entirely different to hold it in your hands, to realize that your next move could change everything. She left his office in a daze, her thoughts swirling in a chaotic storm. It was a long walk home, but her mind didn't allow her the luxury of peace. She couldn't stop thinking about the woman, the patient who had died, and the cover-up that had followed. She tried to imagine the family, the grief they must have felt, and the anger they must have had when they learned the truth had been hidden from them. And then there was Dr. Wells. Was he the villain in all of this? Or was he just a man who had made a terrible mistake, one that he was paying for every single day? As Emily lay in bed that night, the darkness seemed to press in on her. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dr. Wells' face, the pain and the regret etched deep into his features. She could feel the weight of his secret pressing against her, and no matter how hard she tried to push it away, it wouldn't let go. The next morning, Emily knew she couldn't run from the truth anymore. She had to make a decision, and she couldn't do it alone. She needed help, but who could she turn to? Who could she trust with something so massive, so life-altering? The answer came to her, as if it had been there all along. Sarah. She had helped her before. She had given her the key to uncovering the truth. And now, she needed her help again. Emily called her, her voice shaky as she spoke. Sarah, I need to talk to you. Can we meet? Sarah agreed, and they met at a quiet cafe later that afternoon. Emily sat across from her, her hands fidgeting nervously. Sarah looked at her with concern, but didn't say anything. Emily hesitated for a moment before speaking. I need to know what to do with this. I know what happened, Sarah. I know the truth, but I don't know if I can handle it. I don't know what it means for me, for my future. I don't know if I can live with the consequences. Sarah reached out, her hand gently resting on Emily's. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. But remember, the truth is never easy. It's going to be hard, no matter what. But you have to decide what's best for you. Emily took a deep breath, her chest heavy with the weight of the decision ahead. The truth had already changed everything, but now it was time to face what came next. Emily sat in the cafe, her hands shaking slightly as she looked across the table at Sarah. The weight of her decision felt heavier with every passing second. She had come here for guidance, but now that she had everything laid out in front of her, the truth seemed even more complicated than before. Sarah's eyes met hers, full of concern, but there was a quiet understanding there too. What are you going to do, Emily? Sarah asked, her voice gentle. Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I don't know, she admitted, her voice low. I thought I could handle it, but now that I know everything, it's overwhelming. Sarah gave her a reassuring smile. You don't have to figure it out all at once. Take it one step at a time. But Emily knew she couldn't just let it go. The truth had been unearthed, and now, like an unstoppable force, it was pushing her toward a decision she wasn't ready to make. The files she had uncovered, the confession from Dr. Wells, it was all too much. She couldn't simply pretend she hadn't heard what she had heard, couldn't act as if the weight of what she knew didn't change everything. But what if the truth ruins everything? Emily said quietly. What if it costs me everything I've worked for? My career, my future. Sarah reached across the table and placed her hand over Emily's. Emily, you can't live in fear of the truth. It will follow you, no matter what. It's better to face it head on, to take control of it. Emily looked down at Sarah's hand, feeling the comfort of her presence. She knew Sarah was right. Running from the truth wouldn't solve anything. But the question still lingered in her mind. Was she strong enough to face it? Could she go through with it? knowing the potential consequences? It wasn't just about Dr. Wells anymore. It was about her own future, her own integrity. I think I have to talk to him, Emily said, the words coming out more confidently than she felt. I need to understand everything, every part of it. I can't move forward without all the answers. Sarah nodded. I think that's the right choice. But be careful. Once you start this conversation, there's no going back. And you'll have to live with the consequences of what you find. Emily stood up from the table, her mind swirling with uncertainty, but also with determination. She knew what she had to do. It wasn't going to be easy, but the truth never was. As she walked back to her apartment later that evening, her thoughts were a whirlwind. She thought about Dr. Wells, his guilt, his regret, his confession. She thought about the woman who had died, and the family that had been left in the dark. The hospital, the board, and all the people who had covered up the truth. It felt like a maze, one that Emily now had to navigate. She didn't know what the next step would be, but she couldn't keep waiting for the answers to fall into her lap. She had to take control of the situation, even if it meant walking down a difficult, uncertain path. The next day, Emily made her way to the hospital, her heart pounding with every step. She knew what was at stake, and she knew she couldn't turn back now. She found Dr. Wells in his office, just as he had asked her to meet him. His face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that told her he knew the weight of the conversation that was about to take place. Emily, he said, his voice soft but steady, I knew you'd come. She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. I need the full truth, she said, her voice firm now, more confident than before. I need to know everything. No more half-truths, no more secrets. Dr. Wells met her gaze, and for a moment, Emily saw a flicker of the man he had been before, the man she had admired. You're right, he said quietly. It's time. The room felt smaller as the air thickened between them. This was it, the moment when everything would finally come to light. Emily had no idea where this would lead, but she knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back now.